Okay.
Welcome to Gruesome, your horrific true crime podcast. I'm Connie, along with travel aficionado Meg, and this is our January bonus episode. Dun dun dun. I'm not even going to apologize because it's late, because it's just who we are as people at this point.
It's
Sorry.
Patty Hearst.
Patty Hearst.
You picked it, friends. What was the other one? The Central Park 5? Netflix did do a great job. You guys were right. You were right. Netflix had it.
Yeah.
We don't need to jump on their bandwagon.
Oh my.
What are you doing?
I was looking for a piece of paper to mark, keep track of times.
Time.
And I found
Yes.
my birthday gift from Ulta that I had shoved in my drawer. So now I'm like, I gotta go to Ulta.
For this year? Your
It always
birthday's
comes.
next week.
Yeah, 9 days.
Dun dun dun! Everybody get ready.
I'm
Connie's
so
birthday's coming.
excited. My birthday month starts tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it goes for 10 days. And actually, any present that I buy myself between now and March 1st is a birthday gift.
Yeah, that's fair.
First up is a towel warmer. That is the
You are
top
going
of
to get the towel. We've been talking about that for a while.
literally over a year. And it is a bougie purchase that I didn't think I needed. But now I'm like, okay, this is way off topic. And you guys may not want to hear this. But I had bought an automatic dustpan. Remember I was telling you about that? I bought it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, when my vacuum stopped working, I got a new vacuum that does top tier on the hardwood floors that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I was like, it's kind of pointless for me to have this automatic dustpan. I just happened to look on Amazon and it was still within my return window. So I sent it back. So now I have an Amazon credit for $160 because that's what I spent on an automatic dustpan.
I was like, man. Woo!
And now I have extreme first world problems that do I want a towel warmer or do I want one of those shiatsu massage things for my feet?
I think you want a towel. I feel like you'd get more use out of a towel warmer. I think that you'd use the feet thing at first, but eventually it would fade off. But you use a towel every time you shower.
Which is at least twice a week most times.
I was like,
No,
I
I'm
know
just
that's
kidding.
not very much for you.
No, just joshing you guys. All right. We're going to talk about, speaking of luxury, I like to segue into things. Speaking of luxury and finer things, we're going to talk about Hearst Communications.
We're so familiar with those.
With a lavish lifestyle I can't even say that with a straight face. Because I always think that it's I'm doing things are doing pretty well. And then one of the doctors was like, I just bought one of the brand new Suburbans. And I was like, not doing as well as I thought. Geesh. Anyways.
You're still doing well. Who needs a Suburban? Those are giant. Does he have 17 kids?
No, they only have 2 kids. And that's why I'm like, this is a bit excessive. I'm not going to knock what you need to buy. But my Honda Odyssey is nice.
Van life. Hashtag van life.
I love it. I love it. So Hearst Communications is a huge multinational mass media company. It owns tons of magazines, newspapers, including Cosmopolitan, the San Francisco Chronicle. It owns 50% of A&E, 20% in ESPN, et cetera, et cetera. Hearst Communications was founded by William Randolph Hearst. In the 20s, Hearst owned it was the biggest media conglomerate. That's a very look, I say these words and it's I know how to say it. I'm well educated, but my tongue gets stuck. It's just real weird. So I'm going to start that over. What I meant to say was in the 20s, Hearst owned the biggest media conglomerate in the world. Hearst Communications was thrusted back into the spotlight in the 70s, but not from media deals or newspapers. It became its own headline with the sensationalism of Hearst's granddaughter, Patty Hearst. Patty was born Patricia Hearst on February 20th, 1954, in San Francisco, California. She is a Pisces. She was one of 5 daughters. She lived a very privileged life, like, obviously.
Yeah, no
Like
doubt.
like, this is, like, big money that we're talking about here. It's not
It's
like,
like
"Oh, I did okay."
billions of dollars.
Yes, she attended private schools. This is one of the most, especially at this time, the wealthiest, most influential American families. She said that her family childhood was really pretty perfect, like Abby.
No, again, no doubt.
And as we all know, when there are families who are highly influential and wealthy, they usually have a lot of security, or there are like security measures in place to protect them. However, this was not the case with Patty and her family, because Patty's dad, Randolph Hearst, was just one of many heirs to Hearst Communications. And he was considered one of the lesser known Hearst siblings. So, unfortunately, his daughters didn't have the security that they probably should have. So, Patty's 19. She's attending college at Berkeley University. She's living in Berkeley with her 26-year-old fiance, Stephen Weed. Her parents weren't pumped about her living situation because they didn't approve of Weed because he was a teacher at her Catholic high school. So it's quite the scandal.
Also, she's 19
Yeah,
and
19 and
he's
26.
26.
Which, as we know, maturity-wise, about the same. And that's not digging on men. That is scientific fact, okay?
That's
Science.
science.
That's science. And I can even say, I mean, I'm almost 5 years older than my husband, so, like, it's science. It's just your brains just mature a little bit slower. But when you guys do peak, it's top tier, and I'm here for it. But regardless of what Patty's parents thought about their relationship, the two became engaged nonetheless. And I have to say that his name being Stephen Weed, I just wanted to call him Steve Weed, and it sounded so cool to me.
It sounds like, like Matthew McConaughey's character in Dazed and Confused. Like that
Mhm.
guy's name could be Steve Wheat. That's exactly what I
All
picture
right,
is
all right,
that
all right.
yeah, that person as her
Which
fiance.
is accurate because, as he says, you know what I love about high school girls.
Yeah. And he's
See?
a high school teacher. That's those are big Steve Weed vibes right there.
On February 4th, oh, so I should say, so here Patty is living in Berkeley. She's in love. She's studying art history. She's just living life. She's living the life that I wish I could be living right now. On February 4th, 1974, the saga of Patty Hearst began as we all know it. She was at her apartment with her fiance, Stephen. Weeks before her 20th birthday, around 9 o'clock at night, there was a knock on her door. In burst 2 men and a woman with guns. They came in, guns drawn. Steve Weed was assaulted with an empty wine bottle. He was tied up. A neighbor heard the scuffle and came in and tried to help, but he was also beat with said empty wine bottle and also tied up. Patty was dragged from the building and thrown into the trunk of a car. As the car was driven away, the kidnappers fired shots. So the question became, who kidnapped Patty? 2 days after the abduction, the Symbionese Liberation Army, or SLA, as I'm going to refer to them for the rest of it because it's a tongue twister I don't want to have to say again, they claimed responsibility for the abduction. The SLA was led by Donald Freeze. He escaped from prison in March of, I think it's DeFreeze. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. He escaped from prison in March of 1973, and he formed the SLA that July. The manifesto of the SLA was to empower all people, and it focused its attacks on what they claimed to be elements of a capital society. They wanted to close all prisons, release all of the prisoners, and monogamy, and progress the cause of African Americans. Their first big, quote, revolutionary act was the assassination of Marcus Foster, an African American superintendent, in November of 1973. They believed that Foster was supporting an ID system for the students of his school, which I have. Okay, so what's ironic and shitty about this is the SLA is like, we want to further like the progress of African Americans, but we're going to assassinate a prominent African American. And to me, that's redundant and like why it's the 70s. So to have an African American as a superintendent is huge, right? Like
Yes.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
and I don't
Yeah.
understand like it's very
Well, it
hypocritical.
wasn't their idea of what they want. They wanted,
Yeah.
like emptying all of the prisons and um as it will come out later, but like feeding
Yeah.
all the people, like
Mhm.
down with the bourgeois, right?
Well, Foster
No.
yeah, like I'm trying to think of how to say it, like, and I have it in my head. It's like all the power to the people, but like, no government involvement at all.
Yeah,
We want
no
the government.
society.
Yeah. Foster was assassinated with cyanide tipped bullets, and these tipped bullets would become the calling card for the SLA. When the police raided their safe house in Concord, California, they found evidence that the SLA were planning to kidnap the daughter of a wealthy capitalist, and Patty was identified as a possible target. But police took no action to further the investigation. I don't
They
understand
didn't
why.
even like tell her parents or,
No, and that's like
"Hey,
what
just so
like okay,
you know."
your daughter could be a target. Maybe you should make sure she has additional safety measures in place. Maybe you should bring her home from Berkeley. Like none of that. It was just kind of like we didn't see a
Or
thing.
they weren't really taking them as a threat, you know.
Which I don't understand. Like
Just
they just assassinated someone.
Mhm. Yep.
Mm. So Patty was kidnapped by the SLA. Her dad was in Washington when she was kidnapped, but he swiftly returned. The SLA waited 8 days before they made any demands. DeFreeze made his first demand on February 12th. He said at first it started that there were two members of the SLA that were in prison for the assassination of Foster, and they wanted them released from prison. And the police officers, like authorities, were like, yeah, no, that's not
That's
going to
not
happen.
happening.
We're not doing that. So the next demand was Free said he wanted Patty's dad to distribute food to poor people across San Francisco and across the country. I'll talk about these tapes here in a little bit, but there were a series of tapes that were released where Patty was pleading to her parents. And as we all know in this case, her tone kind of changes. Like, well, we'll get to it. You
Yeah.
guys know. You know. So the Hearst negotiated the terms of the food distribution program. As they were negotiating the terms, Patty would later say, like, not right, like later on down the road, that she had been confined in a closet. She was physically and sexually abused. She was only allowed to read SLA propaganda and like these manifestos that they had. She was kept blindfolded for the majority of her time there. And like I said, the original plan was to try to get her to use her as a trade for these two SLA members. So the Hearst Corporation created the food distribution program called People in Need and ordered $2 million worth of food. Her dad actually took out a loan to pay for all of this. There were a lot of people who were pissed that the Hearst Corporation even caved to the demands. They said it was negotiating with terrorists. And actually, Ronald Reagan even said, it's just too bad we can't have an epidemic of botulism in regards to the food distribution.
Ugh, Ronald Reagan, what a
But
fucking gross
can we talk about
motherfucker.
that for a second? Like that
Yeah.
comment, like Was the way the SLA was the way that they were going about this completely wrong? You shouldn't kidnap someone to get what you
Sounds but,
want.
like, all of these wrongs don't make it right. Like, being that
No.
way, but and, like, this is still their daughter, they just want to get her back safely, they're doing what they can. This
Yep.
had something like this hadn't really happened yet. Like,
Yeah, and
there was no
to
what was the precedent? What were they supposed to do?
to say that it's too bad we can't have an epidemic of botulism, like, that's gross because the thousands of people who showed up because they actually needed food, he would go on to say it was like aiding and abetting terrorists. It's like they were hungry. They wanted food. Like, you
Yeah,
can't blame them for what the SLA is doing because they are coming to where there's free food being handed out.
exactly, yes.
So on February 22nd, 1974, the first handouts began, and it was a train wreck. The distributors were disorganized, they were ill prepared. Food ended up being thrown from the backs of trucks and from the windows. Fighting broke out between recipients, the organizers, the police. One police officer was stabbed during the distribution. There was no help from the Red Cross, no help from the United Way, because, like I said, most people didn't agree with the idea of distributing this food, anyways. But from February 26th to the end of March, the Hearst Corporation, they were there every day. They said 24/7. Things started to run like more smoothly. They gave out thousands of bags of food across 4 counties. There were no more injuries, no more riots, but there was so much more drama to be had. Despite having the food checked by a nutritionist, the SLA claimed that the food was bad quality. On March 9th, a fourth tape was released where Patty told her parents, "I don't believe you're doing anything at all." Her dad was actively trying to advocate for her release. Authorities were trying to contact SLA members who were in prison to try to appeal for them to release Patty. And on April 2nd, the SLA promised that details of Patty's release would be available within 72 hours. So, like I said, Patty had recorded a total of 5 tape recordings for her parents in the first couple of months when she was kidnapped. The first tape came on day 9. She said, quote, "Mom, Dad, I'm okay. I'm with a combat unit that's armed with automatic weapons, and these people aren't just a bunch of nuts. They've been really honest with me, but they're perfectly willing to die for what they're doing. And I want to get out of here, but the only way I'm going to is if we do it their way. And I just hope you'll do whatever they say, Dad, and do it quickly." And I mean, I hope that this puts you at a little bit of ease, that you know that really I am all right. I just hope I can get back to everyone soon. So at, I think even at first, you can, like, even with the first tape, you can see she's obviously reading from a script, you know,
Yes.
like,
It
obviously.
sounds like she's reading from a script.
Yes. Yes. On day 13, another tape was released where she said that she was being held as a prisoner of war and not anything else. They said that she said she was being treated in accordance with international codes of war, and that that her dad shouldn't listen to anyone about the way she was being treated. And it goes on. And it says, and she said, "And since I am an example, and it's really important that everybody understands that, I am an example and a warning. And because of this, it's very important to the SLA that I return safely." So she said, "People should stop acting like I'm dead, and mom should get out of her black dress because that doesn't help at all."
Yeah, her mom was going on press conferences dressed in, like, all black as,
Yes, like,
like, almost mourning.
yeah. So on day 34, during the food distribution, another tape was released. And this is where she was shitting on her parents. She's like, "Mom and Dad, I've been hearing reports about the food program. So far, it sounds like you and your advisors have managed to turn it into a real disaster. You said that it was out of your hands. What you should have said was that you wash your hands of it. It sounds like most of the food is low quality. No one received any beef or lamb. Anyways, it certainly didn't sound like the kind of food our family is used to eating." And that's where the tone really started to change. So this leads us to day 59, which is where the tape heard around the world came from. Headlines were blowing up with the story of Patty and her kidnapping. And like I said, another tape was released where she said, "Mom, Dad, tell the poor and oppressed people of this nation what the corporate state is about to do. Warn Black and poor people that they are about to be murdered down to the last man, woman, and child. Tell the people that the energy crisis is nothing more than a means to get public approval for a massive program to build nuclear power plants all over the nation. Tell the people that the entire corporate state is, with the aid of this massive power supply, about to totally automate the entire industrial state to the point that in the next 5 years, all that will be needed is a small class of button pushers. Tell the people, Dad, that the removal of expendable excess, the removal of unneeded people has already started. I have been given the choice of one, being released in a safe area, or two, joining the forces of the Symbionese Liberation Army and fighting for my freedom and the freedom of all oppressed people. I have chosen to stay and fight. I have been given the name Tanya after a comrade who fought alongside Shay in Bolivia." So now there's no Patty, only Tanya. Pictures of her were everywhere. They were some of the most famous ones from the 70s. She had her beret on. She was standing in front of the SLA flag, holding a machine gun. This was the life that she was living. How far in was she? Was it Stockholm? Like, what was the hell was going on? Her parents, I mean, the headline, "I have chosen to stay and fight," was everywhere.
Yeah. It was plastered because, she went from being this victim to all of a sudden she's
Mhm.
joining forces
Mhm.
in the fight to free the oppressed.
Yeah.
And 12 days after that tape was released, Patty Hearst was caught on surveillance cameras robbing a San Francisco bank. It was Hibernia Bank. Then it became Security Pacific, and now it's actually Bank of America. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, cool.
BOA.
Fun little fact for you there. So now she's Tanya, and in the video, in the surveillance footage, you can hear her yell, "I'm Tanya, up, up, up against the wall, motherfuckers." And she's holding an assault rifle while
Mhm.
members of the Symbionese Liberation Army go about the place. They're robbing it, essentially. Which one? Like, if you're robbing a bank, there's legitimately no reason to announce your name, even
Mhm.
if it is your fake name, to the entire bank. And this confused everyone because now it was sensationalist, right? Oh, she released this thing. Did they make her do it? Did she do it? Did she really switch forces? But now she's robbing a bank and it's
It's
scary.
yeah, and it seems you watch the footage and it doesn't seem like footage of someone who is a victim.
No,
She didn't look scared and like she was being made to do it. She looked like she was in control and she was like, "This is what I am doing."
I'm robbing this mother effer, even though I just said it once. So the SLA and Patricia managed to steal $10,692. But while the robbery was in process, two men entered the bank and they were shot with those cyanide tipped bullets. One of those men died and one was gravely injured, but everyone managed to get to the getaway car and they took off. Roughly a month later, on May 16th, William Harris, he was like the other SLA leader. They called him Takeo, other than DeFries, who Connie mentioned
Mhm.
earlier. They go to this store called Mel's Sporting Goods in Inglewood, California, and he was actually married. His wife was also a member of the SLA. Her name is Emily, but in the SLA it was Yolanda. They all had code names. She was in the parking lot with Patty, waiting in their van. And while Takeo was in there, he stole a bandolier, and as he's walking out, they confront him, and he's followed up by a manager and people that work there. And Takeo goes to pull out a revolver from his like waistband that he had it in, but there was a struggle. He dropped the gun, and they ended up being able to like slap a handcuff on one of his wrists. The security guard was able to. But at that moment, Patty swept in, picked up that revolver, and shot out the Mel's Sporting Goods sign that was above the store. Everyone started to take cover, the people that worked there, and the manager specifically said that he jumped behind a light post because the bullets were getting closer to him. Like he felt like she was starting to aim at him. So Patty, Takeo, and Yolanda stole 2 cars with the owners still inside of the cars. Uh,
Oof.
So not only have they now shoplifted, but they also just kidnapped people.
Yeah, that's
And
kidnapping.
yeah, and they stole some cars. But they escaped and they left the van that they had come in abandoned. So of course police come and they find that van and they look through it. They find a parking ticket that led them directly to SLA headquarters. The rest of the members fled when they saw this shoplifting incident on the news. So the people that were in that current headquarters that they found the address for, they left. And it was just a house. They just moved to a different house.
Yeah, like
At
their
the
little safe
time,
houses.
exactly, yeah. So there's a 17-year-old girl at this new place, and she had said that she had a friend named Brenda. No, her name was Brenda, sorry. Brenda would go over to her friend's house and she would play cards and they would drink and fall asleep essentially. Just, teenage party stuff. And
Yeah.
she woke up at around 2 a.m. And when she woke up, that group of SLA was in the house. And Brenda asked, she was like, "Is Patty here?" And she realized, what the heck is going on? And she was only told, "Man, how can I tell? All white women look the same to me." But Patty wasn't there because she just kidnapped the dude and his car. But police did find the new hideout, and there was a huge shootout, which led to a fire within the house. They were throwing gas bombs in the house. They just essentially blew it up, and the 6 SLA members that were in the house died, including DeFreeze, one of the leaders. They thought that Patty, it was likely that she died in there with them, but she did not. And they did finally issue a warrant for her arrest. But they would not find her for 19 more months. She wasn't found until September 18th, 1975. They found her in a low income neighborhood in San Francisco, knocked on the door, and Patty answered. She said, "Don't shoot, I'll go with you." The man who arrested her, his name was Tim Casey. He was a San Francisco police inspector. He talked about how he had been chasing one bad lead after another for months until he finally found her. And he was excited. When he saw her, he just said, "Patty, aren't you glad this is over?" And she just blankly stared at him, and they just arrested her on the spot, along with another fellow SLA member, Wendy Yoshimura. They took her to jail, and her bail was set at $500,000 in 1974.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is. On her paperwork, she listed her job as urban guerrilla, and she said she told her lawyer to tell everyone that she was smiling, that she was free and strong, and sending her love to the sisters and brothers out there. Her bail was set that high because that whole time after the police had essentially shaken down the other safe house they had found, um, they had been building IEDs. They tried to detonate them twice in an attempt to murder police officers. She had robbed another bank in Carmichael, California. During the holdup of Crocker Bank in Carmichael, the SLA murdered a 42-year-old bank customer named Myrna Opsel, sorry. Um, she was depositing money from her own church when she crossed paths with them. And
Ah,
I know, shot her. Cyanide tip bullet. Patty drove the getaway car. Side note, that building is now a church. It's
Hmm, that's
thought that was
ironic.
interesting. Yeah. The money from that robbery was found inside the apartment that Hearst was inevitably found at, which is how they kind of kept linking her to things. But her parents were just happy that she was back and she was alive. She went through a psych eval and they were like, okay, she's competent to stand trial, but the effects of her time with the SLA were evident. She barely weighed 90 pounds. Her IQ had dropped more than 20 points. There
Jesus.
were Yeah, it was 130 before. When they tested her, it was like 112. There were gaps where she couldn't even remember her life before SLA had kidnapped her. She had horrible nightmares, but she had been involved in these crimes, and without having a diagnosis of this is a mental illness, this is something that she as a person is responsible for
Mhm.
her actions unless there is a clear and present threat of death or serious injury. And from the world's perspective, there wasn't.
No.
No. And she saw several psychiatrists, pretty much just psychiatrist after psych. And her family has money. So it's not like
Mhm.
they're just sending, you know, public defense in there. They're paying the best people. There's actually a guy who worked her case free of charge. He was literally an expert in brainwashing. His name's Louis West, and he was from one of the Ivy League colleges. I can't remember which one. I didn't write it down though. But after he essentially evaluated her, he wrote to the president and demanded that she be freed. There was another one named Robert Lifton. He was from Yale. He called her case a classic coerced prisoner of war situation.
Mhm.
Her trial for the Hibernia Bank robbery finally began on January 15th, 1976. And this judge was awful. He he ruled that her statements during and after the bank robbery were voluntary. So his name was Judge Oliver Jesse Carter, and he refused testimony from experts who had deemed that the statements that Tanya, quote unquote, had made were not completely her own. He would not allow himself or the jury to hear any testimony that shined any merciful or favorable light on Patty in any way. During her defense, he was literally falling asleep, like closing his eyes, resting
Mhm.
his eyes while it was happening.
And I feel like regardless of how you feel about the case, she should have been able to have a fair trial with it. And fair trial is adequate, representation on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, she's obviously done horrible stuff during this
Yeah.
time, but she was also herself kidnapped and held in a closet for like 54 days before she was allowed to do anything, like before she was allowed to see anything again.
And
Um,
I mean, I know this is like not nearly the same thing, but you see it in like people who start being friends with other people. And it's like they're doing things they normally wouldn't do. They're saying things they normally wouldn't say because you're kind of like molding to your surroundings. And then you add, you don't have your freedom.
or
And
your
they're telling
family or your
exact
support system.
and they're
Yeah.
telling you all of these horrible things that people are doing with people who have money are doing. And, if that's all you're hearing over 2 months and it's just,
Yeah. And her story became a little bit more clear throughout time. She explained, like, the leaders of the SLA demanded that she was enthusiastic or she would die. During the robbery, photos were taken of SLA members actually pointing guns at Patty, and they kind of used that in her favor. They were like, look, this is her being coerced. This is them threatening her to do what they say. As far as an explanation about Mel's sporting goods, Patty said that she had been trained what to do in an emergency like that. when that began to unravel, she didn't even think. She just acted, and if she hadn't, they would have killed her. The judge also made some pretty gross rulings when he allowed the prosecution to give testimony about Patty's early sexual experiences from even way before the SLA, just to prove that she had not been raped or sexually abused. She said that Willie Wolf, also called Cujo, had raped her. Um,
Mhm.
and they spun it as she voluntarily joined in with them and had been in a relationship with him specifically. And that wasn't fully clear. She did release another tape during her time that said it was after, because Cujo was the guy who had died, one of the guys who had died in the fire as well. And she said that he was the gentlest, most beautiful man she had ever known. They loved each other so much. His love for people was so deep. He was willing to give his life for them. Neither Cujo nor I have ever loved an individual the way we loved each other. Probably this was because our relationship wasn't based on bourgeois values. Um, Even after Hearst revealed that sexual assault, Emily, Yolanda, she gave an interview from jail because she had also been arrested, stating that Patty had a carved trinket that Cujo had given her, which was proof that they had been in a relationship and she hadn't been raped. But Hearst said that she'd kept the stone carving because she thought it held archaeological significance, like pre Columbian archaeological significance. So I can see where that's happening there, but just maybe she was in a relationship with this person, but it's still that same situation where you're trapped. Like, do you have a
And
choice to be in a relationship with that person?
and this may be inappropriate to say, but she was also in a relationship with her 26-year-old teacher.
Yeah.
So, she had been I mean, I'm sorry, if you are engaged at 19, they had been dating for a while, like, he was in a relationship with her when she was in high school. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
she was still in high school when they had a relationship. So, she was
And this is,
already like, that's already adding to, like there's a lot going
yeah,
on there.
it's
There's a lot going on.
in her, yeah, you can, I guess you could kind of see it in her psychiatric state. If she's willing to have this relationship with this much older man and that is her teacher, like, it seems like maybe, and I would say this is true of most 19-year-old girls. Like, probably if a person knows how to manipulate them, it's not as hard
It's
to
called
manipulate a
grooming.
much younger girl. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And this is where the Stockholm syndrome comes in, because Stockholm syndrome is emotional. It happens to abuse and hostage victims because they start to have positive feelings towards their abuser. So, like, it
and
would make sense why people thought
if you
they were
are
in a
co
relationship.
and if you're coming to me and I have lived this life of, like, wealth and privilege, and you are a caring person who is like, "Look, we can help," like, you're playing on her emotions, and it's like,
And
look
you're
at
making her
what
feel guilty like it's
yeah,
her and
look
her
at
family's fault specifically.
yes, look at what you guys are doing to people. Like, look at what
Yeah.
you're doing. Like
We're not saying that any of these things that happened, like, when she was there, were right. We're just saying that, like, the idea that she was brainwashed or had Stockholm syndrome, I don't think is very far fetched. And actually, John Wayne, the cowboy, had pretty big feelings about that as well. He said that, it's people have no issue believing that Jim Jones brainwashed 1,000 people and made them commit suicide. But they
Mhm,
couldn't believe that a terrorist organization could brainwash one teenage girl. Like,
mhm.
I was like,
And
good call,
maybe
John.
maybe they did have a romantic relationship. That gives more like, gives him more power to manipulate her into doing horrible things or believing horrible things. I mean, you can spend
Hmm.
I think we all I think of it as, like, you go to a conference or you go to like any of those like where they're pumping you up, like the motivational talks. And then by the end of it, you're like, hell yeah, yeah, that's absolutely right. I do believe that. I do this, even if that's not really
Yeah.
what you believe. But if you have someone who is like, you know, can spin it or like play on your emotions, or they're just manipulative, that is not. And granted, I could be wrong. We could be wrong. She could have known what she was doing the entire time, but I don't think you can discredit the Stockholm syndrome.
No,
I
I
don't like,
agree.
yeah.
The closing remarks that the prosecution gave suggested that Patty wouldn't have been raped because the women in the SLA were feminists and they would have never let that happen. Which, yeah, that's not. That's. If that were true, then yes, but I don't know that that was true.
And
Inevitably, Patty was convicted of robbery and using a firearm during the commission of a felony, and she was sentenced to 35 years in prison.
I don't think you can make that statement because yes, a feminist would not be like actively advocating for someone to be sexually assaulted. But if said people were also being sexually assaulted,
Yeah.
who is
Yep.
to, you know, like, uh,
No, it's like this is scary and it's messy. Um Patty went to prison. One of her lungs actually collapsed and prevented her from testifying against the Harrises, the ones that she was in the shootout at Mel's with. And when she was finally able to testify, they granted her bond, and her father hired a ton of bodyguards to get her safely to the hearing and return to like where she was staying at that time. She was on probation for the Mel's Sporting Goods shooting and kidnapping. And the man that she had kidnapped was super reluctant to actually testify against her because she had been very charming to him. He said she told him about how effective cyanide tip bullets were because she had been trained to talk about them and use them. And but she was constantly asking him if he was okay and if he needed anything the whole time he was with her. And then she like let him go at the end. But she did end up going back to prison and her bail was revoked because all of her appeals failed. And the Harrises were both charged with kidnapping, sentenced to 8 years each, but she got 35,
hmm,
even
that's
though they were
suspicious.
both there at the same time as the
Mhm.
robberies as everything. People argued that, a lot of people were like, well, she's so wealthy. Like, the only reason that she didn't get like life or she didn't get this is because she's so wealthy. But people were also saying, like, no, they want to make an example of her, like this young, free spirited woman who is rich. They want to show you that, like, see,
You
not
can't just
even they can get away with it.
yeah, that you can't just go do whatever you want and then go live your life again.
Yeah. Uh, Jimmy Carter ended up commuting her federal sentence to 22 months served. He freed her 8 months before she was eligible for her first parole hearing. Her release was on February 1st, 1979, so she served around 2 years. But she was released under stringent conditions. She was on probation for the state sentence on the sporting goods store thing, but she actually received full civil rights in 2001 on January 20th because Bill Clinton gave her a pardon on his very last day in office. Which like gave me Tiger King vibes. You know
Yeah.
how like Tiger King was like
Donald
Donald
Trump,
Trump's gonna
please,
pardon me before he leaves.
please. And he
Like,
was like, nah, we're not.
let's not do that. And that guy just got resentenced for another 21 years for the same stuff.
Yeah, he had a resentencing hearing and they gave him one less year. That was it.
They're just like, there you go, man. Have fun.
Here.
After she was done, she ended up marrying one of the police officers that served as her security guard. And She's been in, like, a ton of John Waters films. She was in Veronica
Mhm.
Mars. Her dogs do dog shows.
Wait, she was in Veronica Mars?
Yeah, she had a cameo on Veronica Mars and in Biodome with Pauly Shore. She's done a ton of stuff.
Yeah, she was in Crybaby too, I remember that.
Yeah, that's John Waters.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh. So she's
He,
thinking the
like, took her in or something. He kinda did that, though. Yeah, he was in, Crybaby, she was in Crybaby, Serial Mom, Pecker, Cecil B. Demented, and A Dirty Shame, which are all
I
John Waters movies.
I have to see who she played in Veronica Mars. Um,
I can tell you,
she's playing
she appeared
characters.
in the episode Lord of the Pies in season 3 of Veronica Mars. I don't know what episode
Um,
that is because 'cause I've never watched Veronica Mars.
you have never
It's
watched Veronica Mars?
I haven't, no, it's just been one of those things on my list, so, like, eventually I'll get to it, but at this time it says that she plays a
Essentially,
Veronica looks into the mysterious disappearance of a wealthy heiress and college board trustee Selma Rose, who's also Patty Hearst. That's hilarious.
um, I got into Veronica Mars was one of my pandemic things that I watched on I had gotten, like, revived on Hulu, and I watched all of it.
See, you haven't even watched it for very long either.
No, I had never
It's
like,
not like you've been
no, I'm not like a diehard I'm not like that, but
like OG.
my supervisor, um, she asked me, like, a year ago, well, a year before I watched it, if I knew it was, like, when it first got revived, if I like she was like, "Oh, man, I just" because she had watched it from the beginning. And so she, like, goes on and on about it, and she's like, "Can I tell you how it ends? I just have to" I was like, "Yeah, I'm never gonna watch it." And I was crushed by how it ended. And then I was like, I'm gonna try and watch this." I could not watch the last season, like, the one they just did on Hulu, because I knew how it ended, and I was like, "I refuse to acknowledge this. This is not how
I
I'm"
You did it to yourself. You did
I know.
yourself in.
And that since then, I haven't really Googled, like, the end of movies. I've been really trying hard not to, but
No, I really love the show Lucifer on Netflix. Well, it was on another thing, but then Netflix picked it up. I obsessively watched every season, and the last season has been out for a while, and I stopped watching it because I didn't want it to be over. But then the other night, I was having a hard time sleeping, and I was just like, I'll watch a show, and then I watched like 5 of those episodes until 1 in the morning, and I had to be at school at like had to
do
get
you
up at like 5, and I was like, "No, what have I done?"
well,
But
do
now
you
I'm almost
remember
done again.
when right when everything shut down, I got into Vampire Diaries, and we were
Yeah, you
texting
watched
about that,
all about Vampire Diaries, yeah.
and I found out, like, I had Googled how it ended because you had mentioned something, and I, like, Googled how it ended,
I did the
and
same thing, and I didn't watch the last season.
I didn't either. I was like, "I'm done."
Because you watch it, like, you binge it all the way, and then by the last season, you've, like, looked up what happens, and now you're just like, "I
And
don't
I
love this. I'm out."
I one of, like, my least favorite symptoms of my ADHD is the fact that I get so unhealthy, like, it's unhealthy. It's, like, I just relate to these characters, and it's not like an obsession, but it's like an obsession, and then,
It
like,
is an obsession, yeah, I
I fixate
absolutely
on
get
the
that.
characters, and I think about it 24/7, and it becomes, like, part of me, and there are times, like, when I would watch Vampire Diaries or honestly, any other show, where I would have to step back because I would be sitting in, like, a normal like, I'd be having dinner with my family, and I would be thinking about, like, these characters as if they were real
Yes.
people, and I'm like, "I'm fucked up in the head, I gotta stop this is weird."
No, yeah, I'm with you, or, like, it's almost like you start putting, like, yourself into
To the
that.
show,
Yeah,
yeah, it's like
like, you're there too, and I absolutely feel that. I 100% am with you, because I do that when I get really into shows, especially, like, fantasy shows, like Vampire Diaries or Lucifer or the other crazy fucking witch shows I watch or whatever. Like, I'm like, "Yes, this is me too. I'm there." And it
and then
does
it
make you're
ends
like,
and
"I'm
it's
crazy."
yeah, because when you're done watching whatever you're watching, you have legitimate withdrawals from it. Like, it's an emotional
Yeah.
like, you are ending a relationship,
It's
and
the worst. I hate when, like, it's over for good. I think that's why it sucks so bad that, like, we're doing seeing all these, like, you get so invested in these, like, limited series or these,
mhm.
like, 3-season shows, and you're like, "But this is my life now."
And everyone makes fun of me, and this is why I will rewatch the same not emotionally complex shows like, on repeat. That's why, like, I watch the, like, King of the Hill, Bob's Burgers, shit that I know exactly how it ends, like, it's very lighthearted because I get
Yeah.
so emotionally invested, I physically cannot take it sometimes, and I'm like, "This
Yeah,
is
I
unhealthy."
get super like, if I feel uncomfortable watching a scene, I get, like, physically embarrassed, like, I have to
Mhm,
hide my eyes, I can't watch it, I'm like, "No, no, I can't,
mhm.
I'm done," or I'll, like, fast forward it, just whatever you gotta do, but
When
I'm with you, buddy.
When Elena left Stefan for, uh, Damon, I was pissed, like, because I am not here for toxic love stories, okay? I am a team Stefan all the way, it's wholesome, I mean, I know Stefan himself isn't wholesome, and then, like, I watched the originals, and, like, when Klaus didn't end up with Caroline, I was like, "Like, I can't even watch this." I'm
That was we deserved a Klaus and Caroline, like, love story, I
Right,
agree.
you give me, like, a little bit at the end of the originals. I didn't watch the end of that either. I was like,
We're
"I
like, "Nope,
know what
that's not what I
happens."
wanted."
I think the only series that, like, I have watched, like, that is like, I watched all of, like, Gossip Girl, and I watched all of One Tree Hill, and as you listen to, like, what I watch and what Megan watches, you can really be like, "How the hell are they friends? They really don't like the same type of things."
You liked Vampire Diaries, it's fine.
That's about the extent of it. I
Yeah, I know.
And, like, in the '90s and early 2000s, I was, like, a Buffy and, what is it? Angel girl, and but,
I've
like, I don't
started Buffy several times, and I have never made it past the 1st season.
you
I
know,
don't know why.
I can't go back and watch it now because I think it's cheesy. Like, I'm like, a high school no. I mean, I'm not gonna watch that, but I'm gonna watch Veronica Mars, The High School Detective. But I'm do the obsession I have now that, like, I am watching, like, as it comes out every week is that Euphoria on HBO,
Oh,
and it
you've been
is
watching Euphoria?
I watched I watched it when it came out last year, and I had missed a chunk of it, but I love Zendaya, so, like, I binge watched it, and now, like, I'm up to date and, like, the new season's coming out. But, like, even the way they're doing things with that, I'm like, "Look, you got about 1 more episode, and I'm checking out for good, and once I'm done, that's it. That's
Um,
it."
there was one of the people we used to hang out with in high school posted about the new like Spider-Man when it was first coming out, like the Tom Holland Zendaya Spider-Man when it was first coming out. And they had commented that they didn't know why they cast Zendaya as MJ, and I was like, "I like her. I think she's gonna be awesome." And, like, just this last year with the last one, it had popped up in his memories, I guess, and he replied to me, like, 4 years later and was like, "Hey, just so you know, you were right, Zendaya's great." And I was like, "Yeah,
Her
she is great."
she is gonna go down as one of those actresses, because she has so much range, and she is just so damn good. She is
She's
I didn't
awesome, yeah.
and I'll be honest, I didn't wanna like the Tom Holland. Zendaya, like the Tom Holland Spider-Man, but I am obsessed with him. I think
Yeah.
he's so freaking adorable. And
He's
now that
so
I'm
cute.
look, and now that I'm older, he reminds me of my middle son, and I'm like, "Oh, my sweet boy.
My
My sweet
sweet
boy could
baby
be
boy.
he could be Spider-Man if he wants to."
I saw a meme the other day where it was like Zendaya with her arm around Tom Holland's waist, and it said like, "This has big. Excuse me, he asked for no pickles energy."
Mhm. You
uh,
have to be that person. My husband he will never complain about anything, and I don't like to, and I will never complain about my food ever. Meg and I have talked about this. Our parents do it,
it's
and
awful.
I will never. I could order a gluten-free cheeseburger bun and like fries and whatever specific, and you could give me a breaded tenderloin and I'm going to eat it. I'm never going to
Thank
correct
you
you.
so much.
This was delicious. And then at the end, if you're like, oh my God, I forgot it was supposed to be a cheeseburger. I don't, oh no, don't worry about it. It was great. It's fine. Well, you ordered gluten free. Oh, it's okay. It's just a diet fad. It's no big deal. It doesn't affect me at all. I'm good.
No, I would Connie and I just talked about this recently. My dad embarrassed me at Cracker Barrel within the last like year, and I couldn't
Hmm.
go back to that Cracker Barrel for months. And
Yep.
like, look, I love Cracker Barrel. I can get blueberry pancakes whenever I want there. And it's like $7. Makes me really happy.
There, where I live, there was a Cracker Barrel who went viral for how dirty it was.
Ew.
And I realized it was like the one that we frequented, and I was like, I'm done. So I can't do Cracker Barrel.
You're
My
out
brain,
now.
I'm out, checked out. But I won't complain. But if it's like a big thing, like I did like a girls' weekend with my in-laws, and I paid like, it was like 260 a night for this room. And
Oof.
it was leaking. Like the bathroom had like a steady leak in it. And my husband was like, "You really complained?" I was like, "I just said like, hey, there's a leak in our bathroom. Can we have a different room?" And they couldn't because it was completely full. So I was like, "Well, can I have some type of compensation? Because I'm laying here and that's all I can hear is this leak, like a steady leak, and it's stressing me out. Is the ceiling gonna fall in? That's over someone's bathroom. Is that someone's fecal matter leaking? Is it pee? Like, what the hell is it?" And he was so disgusted by me that I would even make a big deal about it. He was like, "All right, Karen."
Did they compensate you?
They did. They did.
Oh, well, that's good.
Not the full rate, but I was fine with that.
That's better than nothing.
Yeah,
That's better
I'll
than
take
I would have ever like whenever I expect to do that, I literally expect if I'm like, okay, I have to do it. I have to say something. I expect that they're going to like spit in my face and be like, "We don't care. Fuck you."
the
So if they do anything, I'm like, "Thank you so much." I am
this
taking
is
my hair out right now, by the
I
way.
see
I know
that.
it's just like slowly, it's just been itching me.
uh
Now it's crazy.
I love it. But this is my PSA to book directly through whatever company that you're using. Like whatever hotel, like book directly through the hotel, book your flights directly through like Delta, Southwest, wherever you can, because it makes it a lot easier for them to comp things or fix things if you didn't go through a third party booking agency.
Is that what happened when you booked that hotel? You went through
Yeah,
a third party?
because if I wouldn't have went through like booking.com, I would have gotten all of my money back. But they couldn't comp the fees that booking.com
Oh, I
charged.
gotcha.
So
Good to know.
mhm.
Good to know.
That's also why I always pay with a credit card versus my debit card, because I could have just called the credit card company and been like, this is what happened. And they're like, all right, here's your money.
Handled. Boom. Huh.
Well,
Well,
we rambled for 20 minutes about movies and
we
but
do that a lot, honestly.
I want to hear what our listeners think as far as Stockholm versus not Stockholm. I need to know because I can understand. I see a good case for Stockholm syndrome. Actually, they call it Patty Hearst syndrome now, don't they? Like I
And when your family like owns media conglomerates, I'm sure there are a lot of things out there where like, oh, they like moved the media to say what they wanted to say about her,
Mhm.
and maybe that is all we've read. So, like, what do you think? What are your guys'
Yeah,
thoughts?
because I'm pretty open on it. I could see it either way. I just
Yeah, I could
always am a
too.
firm believer in a fair trial.
Yeah, and she definitely didn't get one with that judge. He was a nightmare. And all of her like psychiatrists that evaled her, he didn't let them testify.
How do you not if I was ever on trial for something, if in an alternate universe I committed a crime, and I look over and old judge whatever is dozing off, I would have thrown a pin at his ass.
Old
Just a
Judge Judy. So she was super medicated during her trial. They that was part of like the frustration from the judge and the defense a little bit too, like who were defending her because she was super lethargic because she was on all these medications trying to get, sane again, I guess. But so it just seemed like she didn't care either way. But I think she did. She just was fucked up,
well, and I
like
can be the first person to
legitimately.
say I have been on some heavy antipsychotics before, and I could not care less.
Yeah. So and then
I
put yourself into a situation where the judge doesn't give a shit about you or
You're just
like
like,
it feels
"Whatever."
like you're not getting a fair trial. You're just like, I'm out.
I was on an unspecified antidepressant after I had my first son, because I had really gnarly PP or p postpartum
Sorry.
depression,
I laughed because you said
PPD.
pee pee.
I know you did. But I had, like, really gnarly, like, postpartum depression, and the medicine that I was on initially, like, eventually, they changed things, but my kid could have fallen out of a building, and I'd have been like, "Meh." And that's when I was like, "I don't think this is healthy. I don't think
This
this
is
medicine
not the
is
one for
doing."
me.
And it
Ugh,
sucks.
that does
But,
suck.
that's also why I'm a big advocate for try something else because it took, like, 2 or 3 times, and now look at me. I'm pretty okay.
The first one I was on was fine for a little bit, and then I just felt like it like just stopped working. And I was like, I want a new thing. And they put me on a different thing. That one's been working for a while, though I have been not great at taking it lately. Because
I
I'm getting up so early and I'm like missing my alarm for it.
I always think about that TikTok where it's like, uh, "What do we got behind this door?" And, like, you open it, and it's like, "You got any other doors?"
Got
And
any
that's
other
how I felt.
noise?
That's what I first felt when I thought I just had anxiety. And, like, I went to, like, the psychiatrist, like, 3 times, and they were like, "You have severe ADHD, and, like, if you blink and squint to the side, like, you have a good you have a good case for, like, personality disorder." I was like, "You sure?
You got any other doors
No.
around here?
You got any other doors?" And then I started ADHD medicine, I was like, "Oh, shit, I do. I do have ADHD." 'Cause I was
Hashtag
like
blessed.
I went there thinking, I was like, "I don't care about anything, and the things that I do care about are I care too much." And they were like, "Do you?" And I was like, "I think I have OCD." And I was going through, like, all of my, like, obsessions that I have and, like, how I freak out about everything. And they did my little, you know,
Yeah, your little
checklist of
thingy.
questions, and they were like, "How often do you do this?" And I was like, "Every day." "How often do you do this?" It's like, "Every day." And they're like, You do have anxiety, but it's from ADHD." And I was like, "Oh." And then
Noise.
that's when they were like, "If these meds don't work, we really need to consider a workup for, like, other things." I was like what?" Like, personality disorder. I was like, "I don't think so."
Like, we're gonna have you committed. Smell you later.
And I was like, "I'm not coming back. Just but you didn't see me."
Disappeared.
But that's like, I'll call my doctor for, like, refills, and they're like, "Oh, you it looks like you should have called us, like, a couple weeks ago." I'm like, "I have ADHD. What do you expect?"
Dude, yes,
I've been paralyzed by making this phone call for 3 weeks,
that happens to my husband too,
and then
whenever
I
he
ran
has to get
out of
his stuff done.
medicine.
And then I definitely couldn't do it because I didn't have medicine to make me able to. Yeah.
Mhm.
Ah, life.
Let me know if you can relate. It is lonely out here.
it's, it's hard out here for a pimp.
Speaking of that, watch the Super Bowl because apparently there is a football game at the Eminem and Dr. Dre concert this coming up.
Wait, was that 50 Cent though that I quoted? It's hard out here for a pimp. No, it's that one guy who was in that movie. I don't even know his name. It was Hustle.
Hustle and Flow.
Maybe.
Hold on, let me see. It's
Oh,
hard
what's
out.
hard out here for a pimp?
It's DJ. Yeah, Hustle and Flow.
Yeah.
How the hell did I know that?
Whoa.
I impressed myself. We'll see you guys next month.
Bye.